Let's trundle in with the drinks trolley, and there it is. Very welcome sight. What do we select from there today, Sister Suze?
Well, I am selecting...
Sorry.
Smooth.
Yeah, nice. Some baby sham, because I brought some in with me today.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
I haven't drunk it, just
I think you can keep that.
Would you like a bitter lemon?
Have mine as well.
The little drink with the big kick. That's what they used to say. That was their strapline.
What, baby sham?
Yeah, baby sham. Anyway, enough of that.
Yeah.
Today's confession
Very tasty.
comes from, if you say so, comes from Tom. Tom says, it's not really from Tom. Please find my confession below, although I've changed our names. My name is Tom. Not really. And this story takes me back to, by the way, 15 certificate.
Well done.
It's a 15er.
Yeah. Okay.
Woo.
Contains reprehensible and illegal activities. This story takes me back to the wild school days of 1987 with my best mate Jerry, also not his real name. Back then, we were the troublemakers of the school and always getting into mischief. One lunch hour, Jerry and I found ourselves in the top assembly hall, up on the stage where we weren't supposed to be. For no particular reason, we were playing with the thick red stage curtains when Jerry noticed a tiny thread sticking out, like one of those stray threads in a shirt. That's when Jerry had the brilliant idea. He said, let's see if that'll burn.
What?
Well, now, what you need to know is we'd just come out of science class, so maybe that was fresh in our minds.
Okay.
Strangely, we even had a lighter, even though neither of us smoked. Anyway, I agreed that I'd light it, and if it caught, Jerry would put it out with his hands.
What?
I mean, what
This is terrible.
what could go wrong?
Okay. Yeah.
I held the lighter up, sparked it, and brought it to the thread. To no one's great surprise, suddenly flames shot up the curtains as if we doused it in petrol. They spread across the top curtain, down the other side, and within seconds, the entire stage was alight. We hadn't factored in the flammable spray they used to make those old curtains look shiny. And in less than 2 minutes, the fire spread across the stage and the lighting rigs began to crash down. This was 1987, so there were no smoke alarms.
Wow.
Really? I think they had smoke alarms in 1987.
Yeah, I think they
Anyway,
did.
it dawned on us that we better act fast. Before you judge, hang on in there.
Okay.
We bolted for the fire alarm in the corridor, but our past mischief came back to bite us. We'd already stolen the little metal hammers used to break the glass on the fire alarms, using them to bop first years on the head. So I had no choice but to punch the glass, setting off the alarm and severely cutting my hand in the process. Poor you. The headmaster came running, taking one look at us standing there with smoke billowing out of the assembly hall. I knew it would be you two. What the hell have you been doing? He demanded. Thinking on my feet, I said, no, sir, we just came in through the main doors. We saw the smoke. I set off the alarm. Though some idiot had they'd pinched the hammer, so I had to punch it with my hand. Look, it's all bleeding and everything. For some reason, he believed me. Well done, lad, he said, and I helped with the evacuation, while Jerry, of course, slipped away unnoticed as soon as the headmaster had arrived. That night, I barely slept, dreading what would happen the next day. When we arrived at school, everyone was gathered in the girls' gym, now the temporary assembly hall. The headmaster took to the front, his tone grave as he spoke of the damage caused by the fire and how long the main assembly hall would be out of use. And then he paused, looking out over the students, and began to speak directly about the actions of the previous day. Now, he said, it's fair to say I've had my fair share of run-ins with a certain boy in this school. That's Tom. We all know he's no stranger to mischief, and I've had to remind him of the rules more times than I can count. My stomach dropped as he said my name. I thought he'd call me up there to face punishment in front of everyone. I half expected the police to be waiting outside. I felt a strong urge to make a run for it. But then, to my shock, the headmaster's tone softened. However, yesterday, in a moment that could have spelt disaster for our school, Tom demonstrated quick thinking and courage. And when he saw the smoke, he didn't hesitate. He broke the fire alarm with his bare hand, set off the alarm, helped with the evacuation of the younger children. His actions may have saved the school from burning to the ground. And he proved that there is good in everyone, even the boys who like to keep us on our toes. There was an audible gasp and a murmur from the students as they looked at me in a new light. Tom, he said, gesturing to me to come up. On behalf of the school, I would like to recognize your bravery. He handed me a certificate for special recognition and a huge sweet hamper. And for once, I felt genuine pride instead of the thrill of getting away with something. As I stood there, I glanced at Jerry, who was smirking and shaking his head, probably both amused and a bit envious. After the assembly, we slipped away to a quiet spot and opened up the hamper, splitting it down the middle and savouring our sweet victory. At that moment, we made 2 promises to each other. First, we would always stay friends no matter what, and second, that we'd never tell anyone it was actually us who started the fire, which is almost a quote from Billy Joel, but not quite. Hence the fake names. It was our secret and something we'd laugh about when we were older, a memory we'd keep to ourselves. But that day also marked a turning point for me. Standing up there with the entire school watching and the headmaster commending me felt different. That fire made me realise that our stunts weren't harmless fun, that they could have real dangerous consequences, and from that moment I turned over a new leaf. I left the mischief behind, realising that some things just weren't worth the risk. I stayed out of trouble, focused on my studies, and tried to live up to the praise I had unexpectedly received. Sadly, Jerry passed away 15 years later, taking our secret to the grave, and to this day only I remain to remember that wild afternoon and our shared promise. As for the assembly hall, it was completely renovated, became a state-of-the-art gym with climbing frames, an indoor football pitch and a basketball court. So I asked for forgiveness. After all, without our little accidental act, the school wouldn't have had those amazing new facilities, and I may never have learnt the importance of responsibility. Kind regards, Tom, MBA, BA Honours, PGCE, MCMI. And PGCE is, of course, is a teacher.
Yeah.
So I think this is the moment that shows that Tom turned his life around.
Didn't he, though?
And went on to achieve all those letters after his name. And let's assume he's an honourable chap. What do you say, Sister Susie?
Well, I hear what Tom's saying with all of that. However, it was danger, though, wasn't it? Very silly.
Danger.
High
voltage.
High voltage. Yes, it was danger, high voltage. And, just don't set fire to things in schools.
No, that's true.
Particularly, I know that he said the coating was flammable. The fabric's flammable in itself. So I think science should stay in science class and not outside. So I don't forgive him.
Brother from another gutter.
Yes, I'm going to forgive. Here's the reasons. Obviously, he's turned his life around, hasn't he? He's learnt from his mistake, and if anything, isn't that what life is all about? Is learning about one's mistakes and moving on. Also, yes, why make the curtain out of something flammable? Feels like that's a recipe for disaster. Feels like it's the system once again that is at fault there, and not Tom. Also, why is he splitting the sweets with Jerry? Jerry ran off. Jerry shouldn't be getting any sweets. And what's a sweet hamper? I've never heard of that. So that's not making any sense. But everything else does, thankfully, including my verdict. And that is why I choose to forgive.
For that reason.
Yes.
61054 on the text. First word is Simon for the People's Verdict, please. Anyway, it's 11 minutes after 6 and we have the People's Verdict going first because it's a story, a heartwarming story about how a school got a newly renovated assembly hall, largely due to the sterling work of Tom and Jerry and the school curtains
being on fire.
There was, because of the chemistry lesson and all that jazz. Anyway, the People's Verdict, here we go.
Not forgiven, says Jane on the Isle of Wight. Everything about this confession is bad. He set fire to the curtain, lied about saving the day, and then accepted a hamper from the headmaster.
Yes.
Does he have no shame? Richard and St Ives, not forgiven. Who thinks to themselves, I wonder if this curtain's going to go up in flames? What a ridiculous thought. For reasons of pure stupidity, I'm not forgiving.
Correct.
But Ruth in Chiswick says forgiven. Tom actually stood there and came up with a fantastic cover story on the spot. His friend just ran off. Hats off to Tom.
And also, he turned his life around.
He did turn it around, didn't he?
Because
Yeah,
it's from
true.
Tom, MBA, BA Ons,
Yeah.
PGCE, MCMI.
And all of those. Yeah.
All of those. Anyway, maybe you have a story of redemption or just a squalid story for us. Send it to confessions@greatesthitsradio.co.uk. Next, we get something warming maybe from the drinks trolley. What have you selected for us today, Suze?
Well, I've selected today, I'm still feeling quite Christmassy, but I've selected a Welsh cream liqueur. Now, you might think cream liqueur, Baileys, but this isn't. It's called Merlin, and it's spelled MERLYN, and it's from Welsh distillery Penderyn, and it's their version of an Irish cream, and it's very delicious.
It's a little bit early for a cream liqueur.
Oh, really?
Don't you think?
Never.
When's the cut-off time for that?
Well, I think nothing before 11 o'clock at night.
Oh, right. Okay.
That would be my side.
No.
Yes. I'll keep mine for later.
Rubbish.
Right.
Do you think? Okay.
It's an after-dinner drink, I think.
Is it? Okay. Matt, did
Good
you have a
Christmas
nice...
present too.
Speaking of after-dinner drinks, Matt, is there anything you want to tell us?
Let's not get into that. Oh, dear.
Matt had a little accident
Yes.
at a
did.
lunch.
Yeah.
And you'd just like to say sorry.
Or so very sorry.
Okay, so... if a drink was spilt in your lap.
Sorry.
Okay.
Anyway.
So today's confession, apart from Matt's
Yeah.
hilarious lunchtime
Oh, dear.
sprawl, comes from Stuart. And actually, it's a Christmas confession. And I'm going with this because it's just a little reminder that maybe the festive period is... There are so many things.
Of course, yeah.
There are parties and presents, and there's food, and there's drink, and there's going for lunch and spilling drinks in people's laps, and all kinds of things.
Get on to that, yeah.
So this is a little reminder. So the first of the year comes from Stuart. Good evening to the cleansing clergy and the friars of forgiveness. I'm seeking forgiveness for my crimes that took place over many a year. We're back into the 1990s. My late father was lovely, but also very annoying, as no sooner had the Christmas turkey been consumed, usually Boxing Day, he'd be asking what we wanted for our birthdays, which were in April. Before the last heat of summer had disappeared, in a sunburst haze, he'd be asking, "What do you two want for Christmas?" My dad was very organised, insofar as there's 4 years between me and my brother, but our birthdays are a day apart in April. I'm not sure what my mum thought about this level of organisation, but that's the house we lived in. Now, I was and still am into heavy rock and metal, and my list of wants usually contained various CD releases by Maiden, Judas Priest, Dio, and so on, to which my father moaned about, and he'd disappear into town to visit local record shops to purchase said releases. He loved popping into town. One time he popped out for fruit and he came back with a hi-fi.
Oh.
Not that we were ever complaining about that, but obviously a hi-fi is better for you than fruit. 5 helpings of hi-fi a day will certainly help you enjoy life more than a banana. Though obviously over the years I have come to learn the benefits of a proper diet, you understand. A little diversion there.
Yes.
Wow. Bananas, hi-fi bananas.
So true.
I decided to have some fun this particular Christmas, and I started putting made-up bands on my list. And these included Death Trolls, the Norwegian death metal band, Sacrilegious Nuns, Sacrifice the Priest.
What?
These were all bands I made up and put on my list for Christmas. Thrusting Dinosaurs was one, and Concrete Car Park was another one.
German krautrock, I think that is.
Now, my dad could turn his hand to anything: carpentry, building, stained glass, and engineering. However, he was very much like the Harry Enfield character. You don't want to do it like that, you want to do it like this. He was always right because he listened to Radio 4.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that's been scientifically proven.
No.
So my confession, Simon, is to apologise to all those good record store staff back in the 90s who would have to endure my dad. I'm sure, my good man, if you check your records properly, not in that cursory way you did just now, you will find some long players by Death Trolls. Or failing that, do you have any Sacrilegious Nuns? Please check your systems again. Can you do that for me? Nothing by Concrete Car Park? This is a shabby state of affairs, don't you think? I have it on a list from my son, and he knows this stuff. And if he says he wants Thrusting Dinosaurs, then that's what he shall have. They would, of course, say that he was wrong, and would he like something by Bon Jovi? At the time of this tomfoolery, there were at least 5 record stores in Hull, so that's a lot of staff who were subjected to his Harry Enfield-style rantings. I don't need forgiveness from my dad as he listened to Gilbert and Sullivan and inflicted that on me and my brother. Though I have to say, Gilbert and Sullivan are very fine, in my opinion.
Of course they are, yeah.
However, but I'm not quite sure who he wants forgiveness from, because if he doesn't want forgiveness, there you go. He wants forgiveness from all the record store staff in Hull back in the days when there were 5 record shops to choose from who had less than positive experiences of Stuart's dad with his list of imaginary heavy metal bands. Sister Suze, you go first here.
Well, Stuart, do you know what? Top marks for imagination there. I do like all the names. Thrusting Dinosaurs, one of my favourites there, probably. However, I can't even imagine those poor store workers.
Yes.
Just in the run up to Christmas, that's enough to be like at the end of your tether with all of the people that shop for Christmas presents that come last minute. It's always your fault. You haven't got I feel sorry for the people that work in shops over Christmas. I did it when I was younger. It's not very fun, and you've made their lives worse by sending your dad to 5 of those record stores whinging about what they're going to get, and trying to find these secret names that don't exist, and then they probably felt bad about it. And for that reason, for the store staff at Christmas, I stand with them and I don't forgive.
Okay, you make it sound a political thing, but maybe Matt's going to pick up on that.
Good work. I'm going to forgive because, in my experience, the assistants in record stores can be sometimes a little bit up themselves, and haven't you not? Why are you into them? You should be into these. So maybe they should broaden their knowledge with the thrusting dinosaurs.
But they didn't exist.
But maybe they should have been looking into that as well. Look under T for thrusting and D for dinosaurs. So for that reason,
yes,
I'm going to forgive.
Okay, people's verdict, please. Do you forgive Stuart for inventing all those metal bands and then sending his dad out to buy them for Christmas? You know the text number. And just before the news, a confession from Stuart about sending his dad to the 5 record stores in Hull every Christmas, looking for CDs by imaginary and totally made up heavy metal bands like Sacrifice the Priest and Concrete Car Park.
Yes.
His excuse is that he was brought up on Gilbert and Sullivan. Anyway, the people's verdict, here it comes.
Completely forgiven, says Frogbelly. Having worked in a record store in nearby Beverley in the mid-90s, we lived for these sort of stories, though I don't forgive Matt for saying we were up ourselves, especially as a fellow rocker. But Maynir in Wrexham says, I agree with Matt, completely forgiven. My brother used to do exactly the same himself just for fun. I remember him going into our local W.H. Smith asking for completely obscure made-up bands. One that stayed with me was Bats in the Belfry. Hilarious confession. And Dave in St Helens says definitely forgiven. As someone who was told to look in female vocalists when asking about an Alice Cooper album in the early 70s, I don't think record store assistants were as clued in as they should be. They deserve to be teased.
Your confession, please, whether it be a record store confession, a rock confession, a Gilbert and Sullivan confession, a Christmas confession, send it to confessions@greatesthitsradio.co.uk.
Yes.
That's what I've heard. Can I say that, Suze? I'm not sure. No.
I think it's all good. Everything's all excellent.
Just slightly not quite.
Yeah.
Okay.
What do we have on the trolley there? What did you grab?
I grabbed 3 glasses of Sauvignon Blanc. It's a nice, crisp white wine.
Very good. Matt, I'll have yours. Thank you very much indeed, because you're not drinking because it is a Wednesday.
Correct.
Today's confession comes from the Butcher's Boy. That's how it's signed. Thank you, Butcher's Boy. Simon, Matt, Susie and the Forgiving Collective. My story goes back to 1987 when I lived with Mum and Dad in our house attached to our family butcher's shop. I worked with Dad in the shop from when I left school. I left twice and was sacked once over the years, but let's not go there.
Okay.
It was a successful time for the business, and Dad wasn't short of a few bob. Very nice. After badgering Dad to buy a new van for the business, I decided a Suzuki Jeep would fit the bill. Bright red with white bull bars on the front. Is that the most practical vehicle for a butcher's? I suspect not. On the rear wheel cover, we had the shop logo. Oh, okay, well, token. All very smart. Anyway, Dad was insistent that I put the Jeep in the garage every night when I got in from wherever I'd been. And make sure you pull the door down, he would say. The garage had one of those up and over doors on it. Yes. This lasted a few weeks until the novelty of my new Jeep wore off, and I couldn't be bothered to faff around putting the Jeep away late at night. Besides, the door coming down would wake everybody up at night, and so actually I was just being thoughtful. Dad didn't see it like that, and he would moan at me in the morning about it on a regular basis. The garage was a large outbuilding, which was once the abattoir for the shop. Dad had an internal wall built so that half the building was our cutting and sausage room.
Lovely. Oh, fun times. Yeah.
The other side of the wall was the garage, which was just about big enough for the Jeep. Well, a multi-purpose room, this is. I found out the first time I put the Jeep in that if the Jeep wasn't in far enough, the door would come down, hit the rear tyre and fly back up with a big smash. I worked out where to park the Jeep, so the door came down with millimetres to spare. Dad, meanwhile, had bought himself a very nice Mercedes saloon. As I said, wasn't short of a property, very successful butchers.
Yes.
He was very proud of it and cleaned and polished it almost daily. No room for 2 cars in the garage, so the Merc stayed out on the drive for everyone to see. Another morning telling off for not looking after the Jeep that I bought you, which seems a fair point, really, I have to say. And you never bring the door down lecture, Dad must have thought. If he's not using that garage, then I will. So I came home one night from wherever I'd been and found the Mercedes was already in the garage. Oh dear, I thought, Dad's not taking his own advice and hasn't pulled the door down. I was going to get so much mileage out of this in the morning. So I pulled the door down with great gusto, knowing that the noise of the door would probably wake Mum and Dad and prove my point. With a sickening crash, however, the door came down on top of the boot of Dad's brand new shiny Mercedes, and a nasty dent ran across it. Deep, ugly, catastrophic. I'd forgotten that the Merc was bigger than my Jeep and therefore stuck out of the garage. Also, you sound as though you might be blind as a bat, the butcher's boy.
Yeah.
I went to bed and hardly slept a wink, dreading the consequences. Anyway, in the morning, a cold, dark morning, Dad was up at 0500 hours, taking in the meat delivery and putting it in the fridges in the cutting room. You know, the cutting and sausage.
The sausage room, yeah.
Sausage room.
On seeing the garage door open, he must have thought, oh, I better practice what I preach, and pulled the door down, replicating what I had done some hours before. Boom and crash. He was beside himself as he realised what he had done. He came into the kitchen with a pained expression on his face and he told us what he'd just done to his new Merc. I consoled him, of course, whilst letting out a huge relief. Didn't you realise, I said pompously, the Merc would stick out a bit? I only just get the Jeep in, I explained. Yes, said my crestfallen father. I found that out last night, but I forgot this morning. Here's the thing, Father Simon. Dad still doesn't know that it was me that had initially started the damage that he added to and ultimately took the blame for. He is 83 now. So, after 37 years, I am seeking forgiveness for not letting him know about the initial damage and letting him blame himself year after year, decade after decade. Well, it's interesting. I do like a tale that ends like that. We're thinking, okay, well, that's so you should have owned up, but poor father, 83, struggling with the burden of knowing that he'd damaged his own Mercedes.
Yeah. When
really it was his pesky son, the butcher's boy. What do you say, Sister Suze?
Well, I just, as I probably did some things that if I got away with it like that, I probably would have kept quiet. But you own up eventually, don't you? You can't keep quiet for that long. And I think just for that shocking revelation at the end, I just can't forgive you. Your poor dad. You should have come clean.
Plus,
not
butcher's boy,
forgiven.
you got a free Jeep, for heaven's sake.
Yeah.
How many people
Yes.
get a car like that? Not many. Anyway, what do you say, Brother Matthew?
I am going to forgive, and reason why is, what's the point of parking your Merc in the garage if you can't close the door? Then, and if the Merc's too big, then there's no point, is there? So whose fault is it? Is the person who parked the car in the garage that was too small? Why is the garage too small? It's because you've decided to put in a cutting and sausage room.
Yes, just by the abattoir.
Yeah, anyone offers you a tour of the cutting and sausage room, I'm going to pass. Thanks very much. For that reason, I am going to forgive.
You're a meat lover, though.
I do, yes, but no cutting and sausage room for me. Thank you very much.
So you don't like to see where it all comes from?
Oh, is that it? Lovely.
You media southern softy.
Metropolitan elite.
So forgiveness, please. What do you say? Forgiveness or no for the butcher's boys? 61054. First word is Simon. Just before the 6 o'clock news, a confession from the butcher's boy who basically damaged his father's car with the garage door, but let his dad think that he had done the damage. And to this very, very day, 37 years later, with his dad at 83, this is the first time his dad has heard anything about it. It's a shocker. Matt has the people's verdict. Here we go.
Johnny in Glasgow says, not forgiven. I feel sorry for the dad. Those saloon Mercs from the mid to late 80s were so lovely. I can't believe Butcher's butcher's boy was so careless. But Jack from Liverpool says, I forgive the butcher boy because you don't buy a car that doesn't fit in the garage and then try to make it fit. But Gary in Leeds says, like father, like son, I forgive them both, the silly sausages.
The sausages in the cutting room.
Yes,
very nice.
Room.
If you have a confession, please send it to confessions@greatesthitsradio.co.uk. Now we need a drink. Obviously something light, I think, is required. What do you have, Suze? Because Nigel will turn up with heavy food and heavy drink very shortly. So what are you bringing us? Oh, there you go. There you go. Checking in with Suze there.
Here she is, everyone.
Live from the snug.
Yep.
Yeah.
There she is. Take it away. What's on our drink trolley?
Cosmopolitan is what she's offering.
A Cosmopolitan?
Yes, a Cosmopolitan. Yeah.
Well, what's in that?
Vodka, triple sec, cranberry juice, fresh lime.
Fresh lime.
Okay. Slight communication detail issues there going down to the snug, but I think we're fine now. Check in with Thursday's confession, which today comes from Sybil. Thank you, Sybil. Father Simon, Brother Matthew, and the sometimes squiffy Sisters of No Mercy. I think that's you, Suze, she's talking about. Slight delay. We're bouncing out of space. Confessing here about an incident from 1982, and it's probably well overdue. For reasons that will become evident, the trainee server at the heart of this saucy tale will be referred to as Coleman, and myself, although young at the time, as Sybil. Imagine, if you will, a slightly posh hotel restaurant that aided its staffing quota by offering work experience to young ladies and gentlemen undertaking hospitality qualifications, as many establishments did back then. Despite a robust interview, once in post, the attitude and ability of these young people varied somewhat, and the impact on the whole team was significant one way or the other. Enter Coleman, who began his work experience in the restaurant and from his first day on shift seemed to exhibit a natural talent for raising the hackles of the majority of colleagues that he came into contact with. Maybe we've all worked with someone like that. Although capable, he chose not to display any talent for anything else, except maybe the skill of avoiding completing tasks assigned to him. On the whole, he did this by charming a few of the older, very hard-working female waiting staff who would bear the brunt by completing many a mundane job left by Coleman, such as polishing no end of cutlery and glasses for him, clearing the tables for him, and worst of all, refilling the dumb waiter, which included the dreaded task of washing and refreshing the many carousels of condiments for him. It was common to hear them say, "Poor laddie, he's so used to having his mum do everything for him." So I don't.
Oh dear, this isn't going well for him.
You taken against Coleman?
I think we all have that.
In my role as assistant manager, with a very hands-on role, overseeing the establishment, there was a fine balance between sitting back or wading in. However, when I overheard Coleman bragging about getting away with doing very little for the same share of tips, it was time to act. Now, Chef, who we worked with, the chef had come from a naval background, so had little time for shirkers. Therefore, Chef and I hatched a plan. Upon arrival next shift, Coleman was approached by Chef, who told him in no uncertain terms to attend to the carousels of condiments. Something like, I think he said something like, "Fill the bleeping things up, bleeping now, lad, and I'll be inspecting each and every bleeping one."
Oh, got it.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Important to note at this point is that a beyond pristine uniform was required, and naturally, Coleman's was kept pristine by his mother.
Ugh.
The glass jars of condiments, being catering jars, were very large and very heavy. Already looking less than his usual confident self, Coleman went about the task. And as he began, Chef barked at Coleman, reminding him that the jars needed a vigorous shake, then a stir, then a shake again, then another stir, and then pointing menacingly at the label of instructions. And before long, Coleman had rolled up his pristine shirt sleeves and he'd cleaned all the carousels. He lined up the heavy jars, then went about shaking and stirring and filling. All went well until it was the turn of the mustard. hot and English since 1815.
Really, that one? Okay.
But then I am a sausage. As Coleman, who by now, having accepted his lot, was well into his stride, gave quite the full jar a huge, vigorous shake, and then off popped the large lid, and a tsunami of strong brownish yellow fluid shot into the air and landed in his hair and in his ears and up his nose and all over his pristine uniform and over the worktop, the replenished carousels, and even reaching the ceiling. The ceiling? As this was pre-service, the kitchen was full of staff who clearly found this hilarious. The thing is, though, dearest Father Simon, that it was I, Sybil, who happened to know that Coleman could not stand mustard of any type, and I had managed to loosen the lid of that particular condiment jar as a major part of our plan. I am not begging forgiveness for Coleman. A lesson wholly suited to 1982 was certainly needed. I am, however, seeking forgiveness from his poor mum, who no doubt had to scrub his uniform, as well as the kitchen porter, who was instructed by chef to clean the bleeping ceiling and the bleeping worktop, because Coleman, being too distraught to stay in the shift, had, bless him, gone home.
Oh.
I mean, he's a bit of a softie. All round, I think, it's very good fade.
I thought so. Very smooth.
I thought it was extremely good.
Yeah.
Yours, a semi-sorry Sybil. I think, have you worked with people like that, Susan, in the pub? I suspect you probably have.
Yeah, I have worked with some people like that, and it is true. There's a lot of people that the mums do a lot of things for them, and then they're just rubbish, aren't they? So I feel like he should have learnt to do things for himself and stop relying on his mum or other older ladies that he worked with. So I kind of see Sybil's point here, but just for the mess, I can't forgive her, because that would have been horrible.
Chaos in the kitchen, mustard everywhere, hot
Yes.
and English since 1815. What do you say, Matt?
I am a sausage. So yes, I'm going to forgive because I mean he should be checking the lid, shouldn't he? If you're shaking your mustard, you check. There's a rule 101 when working in a kitchen.
Is that right?
Is check your lids before you shake your mustard. Not a euphemism. Yes, I think he's learned his lesson. Well, maybe he has, maybe he hasn't. I don't care. I don't particularly like him at all, really. And I don't see why the KP has got to clear everything up. Mind you, that's his job. So for that reason,
Yes.
I'm going to forgive.
Okay. I think you took against Coleman quite early on in that story anyway. Okay, so is the people's verdict, please? Do you forgive Coleman? No, do you forgive Sybil? That's the one. 61054, first word is Simon. Just before the news, we had a confession from Sybil. Well, it was basically fabulous Sybil against annoying Coleman. A story from a kitchen, and Coleman ended up disappearing underneath a tsunami of mustard. The people's verdict is in. Here it comes.
We're all forgiving tonight. Andy from Bramley and Leeds says, having been a hotel assistant manager before joining the Navy and having worked with slackers myself, forgiven. Chefs in the Navy are not to be messed with, so retribution was only a matter of time. Ex-bar manager Sally Jane says, forgiven. We've all worked with someone like that. They should have made him clean the ceiling, though. It's all part of the work experience. Always clear up your own mess. And Archie says, forgiven. That fella didn't cut the mustard.
No, it wasn't worth including that.
It was,
but anyway,
definitely.
But Andy from Leeds is exactly right. Do you want to mess with a chef from the Navy?
No, you don't.
I don't think so. Your confession, please, to confessions@greatesthitsradio.co.uk.